This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the October 2nd, 2024 South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners meeting. I will call this meeting to order. We do have all commissioners present this evening. At this time, I would ask you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to announce that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded, filed, and posted to the Township website for public access. At this time, I'd ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to please review our public virtual meeting rules.
Thank you. The public virtual meeting rules are as follows. Courtesy of the floor for non-agenda items will be at the beginning and end of the agenda. Public comment will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. For all listed agenda items, the board president will call for courtesy of the floor prior to the board of commissioners taking action on that specific agenda item. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized, then move to the podium when directed. You will be asked to state your name and address for the record and may then proceed with asking your question. For those participating virtually, please mute your microphone or telephone to avoid any background noise that may cause interference during the meeting. The chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address into the chat box. The staff member monitoring GoToMeeting will then unmute your microphone and you will have the opportunity to comment or ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'd also like to announce the Board of Commissioners met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters. At this time, under announcements, item D, we have a moment of silence to recognize former South Whitehall Township Public Works employee Vernon L. Smith, who passed away on Friday, September 20th, 2024. Vernon was employed by the township beginning June 17th, 1985 as the transportation manager and worked for 17 years until retiring on June 11th of 2004. At this time, if you'd please observe a moment of silence with the board. Thank you. Agenda item 4 is courtesy of the floor. This is opportunity for any member of the public to comment on any non-agenda items. Is there anyone here present this evening who'd like to address the board? Seeing none, is there anyone online who'd like to address the board?
If you could type your name and address into the chat, and we will unmute your microphone. I apologize. Diab Hadid, 2300 block of Minikchin. Go ahead and unmute.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Minish Road. I'm sorry. Type it on my phone. It's auto-correcting. Yeah, so I'd like to first step on something that is not on an agenda. It's somewhat an agenda today, but was an agenda last time. It's about our tax dollars and how they're being spent. I'm a South Whitehall Township resident. My family, we've lived here for over 20 years. And it looks like our last agenda, we spent over $9,000 paying a company to look for a chief of police. We spent $9,000. It's been months. And now I see, I'm not going to talk about what's on the agenda later, because I'll get to that when it gets picked up. I want to talk about last agenda. We haven't heard yet. You haven't been transparent with us. We don't know what's going on. And now I'm not going to talk about it yet, but we're wasting more money later on. I want to know if you guys are going to be transparent with us and let us know what happened.
Sir, thank you for your comment. This matter will be addressed later in the agenda when the agenda item 7A, which is a resolution for professional services for a search firm for police chief. So we will be addressing this issue and updating the public at that time.
Okay, thanks. I'll wait then.
Of course. Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else online with a public comment at this time? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is our meeting minutes from the September 18th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting. They have been distributed to the board in advance for your review. Are there any comments? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 6A, ordinances. We have an ordinance of the Township of South Whitehall, County of Lehigh, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending Part 2, General Legislation, Chapter 240, Parks and Recreation of the Codified Ordinances of South Whitehall Township in its entirety, enforcement of violations, fines and penalties, repealer, failure to enforce, not a waiver, severability, and an effective date. I'll ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to please present.
Thank you. This ordinance is in response to issues that were identified during the 2024 summer season involving loud music, cooking activities, grilling, placing objects that don't belong into the creek along the Jordan Creek, and other type similar actions. So it's a comprehensive amendment to Chapter 240 of the Township Code of Ordinances. It was developed in accordance with the recommendations of staff, including police, public works, and parks and recreation personnel. It was also sent to the Parks and Recreation Board for their review later on in the process. So at this point, the ordinance is ready for adoption during the September 18th Board of Commissioners regular public meeting. The governing body approved the advertisement of the ordinance. It was advertised in the September 19th issue of the Parkland Press and sent to the Lehigh County Department of Law on September 19th, 2024. Those actions are included in your packet, the confirmation thereof. So I would seek a motion to adopt the ordinance as presented. And following the adoption, the township will work on improving the signage to become consistent with these new regulations in the park.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Before I open the floor to the board for comments, I just had a question if there was any feedback or comment from the community from the advertisements of this ordinance.
There was not. Members of the Park and Rec Board did communicate that they were in agreement with the provisions of this ordinance, so separate from the public meeting of the Parks and Rec Board.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, does the board have any comments or questions on this ordinance? Hearing and seeing none, is there any public comment? Is there anyone online with a comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve adoption of said ordinance, amending Part 2, Chapter 240 of the Codified Ordinances of South Whitehall Township in its entirety? We have a motion. Is there a motion is second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 7A, resolutions. We have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the Township Manager to execute a professional services contract with Aspirant Consulting Group, LLC, for an executive search for the position of Chief of Police of the South Whitehall Township Police Department. And Tom, if you would please present.
Thank you. South Whitehall Township is seeking to utilize a firm to help assist township management and the governing body to select the next chief of police by way of a competitive search process and independent evaluation. The township has obtained a proposal from Aspirant Consulting Group, LLC. The proposal is going to be considered for approval as part of a resolution before the Board of Commissioners. So the proposal includes executive search, $9,500, and an oral interview panel, $1,750, for a total of $11,250. So previously, the township did engage the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association earlier this year to also conduct an executive search and evaluation for the position of Chief of Police. Following the completion of that search, the process did not result in the final selection of a successful candidate. During the search, the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police manager leading the process, Greg Bean, passed away unexpectedly. To date, the township has not received an invoice for that search, which concluded in August. So as noted earlier in this evening, yes, we did allocate approximately $9,000 towards that search, but we have not received the invoice for that at this time. So the selection of the position of chief of police is a decision that is in the sole discretion of the Board of Commissioners. But because of the outcome of the last search, that is the reason that we are seeking to utilize a separate search firm at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. I'll open it up to the board for any comments or questions on this resolution.
Sure. I have two important points, especially given the public comment from the gentleman earlier, which I appreciate. The first is, as Tom said, we have not received an invoice for the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police search process that they started us with. So essentially, as we stand tonight, we have not paid for a separate search. This is an additional search, but we will not be, at least it's as it stands at this point, be paying for those two separate searches. We have not thus far. And just second, as a general comment, especially for the gentleman earlier, if he has any additional comments, this is selecting the chief of police next to selecting the township manager is perhaps the most important thing that this board will ever do. So we take this job incredibly seriously, and given what happened with the former manager of the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association, I personally believe it's prudent to conduct a search with Aspirant, this new firm that can get us to the end of the process, something that we were not unfortunately able to do before, because this is a serious job. Community, deserves to have a process that is thorough. We do, all the applicants do, and because it is a personnel matter, I believe we really owe it to the applicants and to the community to have as thorough a process as possible. So I am certainly in favor of this moving forward, and I do understand the financial concerns, but I'm thankful that those have been addressed. This will not represent an additional burden on the township, on the taxpayers, and certainly this will not represent an additional burden on our budget for 2024 as well. Just two general comments I feel I needed to make.
Thank you, Commissioner Roth. I appreciate your comments. I have very similar thoughts. I will not repeat so that we don't have duplication, but this certainly is a personnel matter, certainly to comment to the resident with the comment during courtesy of the floor. It is a personnel matter, and the board does work very professionally and confidentially, both for this process and for applicants. So we will report out to the public when there is information that we are able to report, which is why we're here tonight with this particular matter on the agenda. We do express our condolences to the family of Greg Bean with PA Chiefs Association. He was really a wonderful help to this board, and we were very sorry to hear of his unexpected passing. I will advise the public, rest assured, our board will work very diligently to advertise and attract candidates to be interviewed, and we will be looking to select the most qualified candidate to lead our police department, and also to, as they oversee and protect and serve our community. It's, as Commissioner Roth has stated, this is a very sobering and significant, important decision for this board to make, and we do not take it lightly, and I want to assure the public of that as well. Are there any other comments from anyone on the board? Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Yes, if you come up to the podium. There is not a microphone to turn on and off as there was in the past. If you just,
I'm loud enough that you'll be able to hear me.
okay, we do need your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Paul Dickinson. I live at 1118 North Glenwood Street. Just because we haven't received an invoice from the PA Chiefs does not mean that we're not going to receive an invoice from the PA Chiefs. So then we would be at $20,000 for a search, correct?
That's correct. So what we did is we have an approved purchase order for the PA Chiefs Association. So that money is encumbered and we're not resulting in a budgetary overage as a result of that. So if the invoice did come in, we would review that invoice and try to attempt to reconcile it. And then even in addition with this new allocation, it's not creating a line item to go over in the budget.
Okay. Second question that I have for you is, you said you were unable to get to the finish line with the candidates that were presented to you from PA Chiefs. Was that because you were unhappy with the PA Chiefs? I mean, how do we go from having a process to and some of you on this board know who I am, and I was involved in the process, and I'm just kind of curious as to how we go from what we did, now we don't have anybody. I mean,
without getting into specific personnel matters, the search did not result in a successful offer to a candidate that was then ready for approval at a board meeting.
And the other consulting firm, have they offered you any other? Because you could advertise this again and get the same caliber of candidates.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
That's a fair point. I think it's a point the board needs to consider in making this decision. As someone who has some knowledge in this field, not only in the law enforcement field, but in the consulting field, that is a serious concern that I think you have to have. The firm that you're hiring, I don't know what their resume is. I don't know how many executive searches they've done. I know they're strongly an accreditation firm. They do mostly accreditation work. And I'm concerned as a taxpayer and as a resident that you may go through this whole process. You're going to be another 3-4 months out and still not have a police chief. And I think that's a serious concern that you need to be concerned about here. I mean, because the timeline to get this done with PA Chiefs was a solid 5-6 months. It was at least 4 months before he did interviews. Then unfortunately what happened to Mr. Bean happened. And then, can't comment to the rest of it. But I'm just, as a taxpayer, I'm concerned to see the board spend another $11,000 when you could end up with the same exact situation that you already have. And since we can't go into specifics, I'll leave the rest of it to be found out later. So,
I just have an additional question for Tom first on the financial end. We are still well under budget for professional services for this line item that the search came out of for the year, correct?
Correct. So we've used a combination of several line items, but overall it's not creating a budgetary issue.
And we did, the township did save money when former Chief Dorney resigned for the rest of the year for the salary that had been allocated for him.
That is correct.
My only other comment be, we try to be as transparent as possible, but divulging certain details publicly, I think would be unfair and could do a great disservice to any candidates. So for that reason,
I'm well aware of that.
I'm
not looking for you to disclose information. I'm looking for you to think to what this may put you at in 5 months or 3 months. I don't know how quickly their turnaround is going to be. But it's just something I think that you should consider. And I also would like to add that. Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else present this evening with a comment? Yes, ma'am. Good evening. If you just give us your name and address for the record.
Certainly. Nancy Horvat, Horvat, 3935 Wordsworth Street. And we're writing away here. I don't mean to point, but I pretty much want to echo this gentleman's sentiments. We've gone through the process. As a public, we were unaware that it wasn't complete, or whoever you offered it to didn't take it. I'm not sure exactly where we are. You said we didn't get an invoice, but then we did get an invoice, and you're looking at it.
We have not received an invoice. We have allocated the money towards an invoice.
Okay, then I misheard you.
Yes, thank you.
I think we do need to think about this. Another $11,000 and change, which sounds like a drop in the bucket, perhaps to what you folks look at. As an educator, what I look at, that's a lot of money. and we need to be very careful about how we spend it. So I'd like you to take it to heart, which hopefully you do, and decide whether or not this is the best way to proceed.
Thank you for your comment, ma'am. Is there anyone else present this evening with a comment? Is there anyone online?
Yes, Mr. Hadid, you can unmute your microphone. Go ahead and give your name and address again. Thank you.
Yeah, Diab Hadid in the 2300 block of Minich Ave. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, so a lot of points I want to touch on that we're talking about here. We went through a process, and you're going to tell us that we didn't go over budget. We didn't meet this line you keep talking about. At the end of the day, whether we go over our budget, stay under the budget, we are wasting money. I'm a township resident. I got hit with 100% trash bill increase, and now I got to know that my tax dollars are wasting because you want to consider not paying the last chief when he left the corporation. You want to say that we're saving money because of that? That seems like you're saying that we're proud that we're saving money when we don't have a head figure in our police department. I can see what your comment meant, but that is the wrong thing to say. You said that you can't get into personal matters about the first company and the candidates they gave us, and we haven't received the bill yet. In what world do we live in where people are not going to want what they're owed? I'm sure this company is going to want their money. So we will end up paying that bill someday. And when I say we, I say the township residents will be paying this bill. We are paying this bill. And it seems like you came into this meeting maybe with your minds made up, but that's not how it works. You have to take the opinions and the voices and you have to listen to us. We are the residents. We are the people of this township. And if you don't take a step back and say, you know what, we're going to think about it and then realize what you're wasting for us, then you obviously do not care about the residents. Now, you had a candidate. This place, they give you a list of candidates they interview. Seems like a professional company. You're going to tell me they only said, here you go, here's one candidate? And if something didn't work out with that, you're saying we didn't have another option? And like that gentleman who went before that woman, and he said, who's to say these candidates aren't going to come back? And who's going to want to apply for this job? They're going to think it's a joke. Oh, why apply? We already applied. They don't like us. They don't like what they got. They're going to want something else. You're making a huge mistake. Be a caring person and realize people are hurting and we're wasting money. Think about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Hadid. Is there anyone else publicly or online? Okay. So we've heard some comments from the public. I'll ask our township manager, is there anything else to add from the administrative end of this?
I just wanted to add that the outcome of this next firm is not known, can't be known until we undertake the process. So it's not a negative outcome at this time. So, there seems to be a indication that that it's already an endeavor that won't result in a successful outcome. I think that remains to be seen at this time. So if the board is inclined to proceed, the township is looking to proceed in the best interests of the township to secure a candidate for the chief of police that will meet the ideal traits of the position.
Very good. Are there any other comments from the board at this time? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution authorizing the execution of a professional services contract with Aspirant Consulting Group for an executive search for the position of Chief of Police for the South Whitehall Township Police Department, with correction to confirm there was just a typo in the document. The amount of the contract is $11,250. Do I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And item 7B, we have a resolution extending conditional preliminary final approval granted to a major plan entitled 1670 Church Road, Pata Property LLC. I will ask our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to present this agenda item, please.
So this was an application to further develop the property located at 1670 Church Road. The plan proposes to renovate the existing commercial building, construct a 23-space parking lot, and stormwater management facility in the roughly 3.5 acre parcel. Property is zoned industrial commercial 1. Pata Property LLC is the owner and applicant. At the October 19th, 2024 meeting, the Board of Commissioners granted a 6-month extension for the plan to be, all the conditions to be met prior to plan recording. The plan was originally approved on October 19th, 2022. There were 23 conditions of that approval. To date, they've satisfied 18 of those 23. Several of them are checks as we finalize the recording process. So it's really only 1 or 2 conditions that they're left with. They're close to the finish line. They're here to elaborate if you have any questions for them.
Very good. Before I open it up to the board for any comments or questions, I will ask our township engineer if you had any comment for the board on this agenda item.
At this point, we have signed Mylars, meaning that we have completed the engineering review. The outstanding item would be the improvement security estimate we have provided to them. They understand that it was done December 2022. So at this time, when they're ready to finalize, we might take a look at the numbers, but just to confirm, prices are still applicable. But besides that, we have no engineering objection to this being extended.
Very good, thank you. Does the board have any comment or question on this resolution?
So if I can read this correctly, in February of 2022, the zoning hearing board granted a 1-year extension, then which would have put in 2023. And then this board granted them an extension in 2024, which is a 2-year extension from the original request in February of 2022. Now they want an additional 4 months. Is that, am I getting that right?
Yes. So the zoning hearing board, I think once that decision in order is written, that carries with the land. So I think I don't know the details of it, but I suspect that there were some outstanding issues and that's why they needed that extension.
And that's fine. It's just a lot of time, 2.5 years.
It can take a while.
But from what I'm reading, it's also the DEP that lagged a little bit. There was a delay with the DEP.
Is that the only
May I?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
And thank you for this microphone system. I had trouble with the last one.
I know.
So
Apologize for that.
I'm thinking you did it just for me, but I'm John Swartz. I'm the attorney for the applicant from Prokop and Swartz. To address your question, the zoning, we were able to meet the zoning requirements by initiating some of the work that we did not need permits for to get the ball rolling. So that's why we're able to establish the zoning. We didn't need any more extensions there, if that makes sense.
Well,
I think that was one of your questions.
It comes down to is the only thing you're waiting for is DEP. Once DEP approves, then you can start developing. And
Actually, we have DEP now. We needed DEP to complete our financing for the letter of credit. So it took us longer than we expected to get DEP approval. Not blaming DEP, actually DEP acted very quickly. We had some issues with what was submitted by our environmental engineer. Kind of our problem, we understand that, but we have to rely on our experts. So DEP is complete and we've gotten our clean bill of health there. It's the banking side of getting this letter of credit complete. We're this close. That's why I didn't want to risk it. Here we are. I think October 19th is our deadline. I'm an optimist.
No,
And, yeah.
so just within 4 months, like in the spring, we'll start to see some construction and it's moving forward.
Yes. Yes, we're excited about it. And we appreciate you allowing us this opportunity again.
Are there any other commissioner questions? Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Anyone online with a question on this agenda item? No. Hearing and seeing none. Do I have a motion to adopt said resolution approving a 4-month extension to a major plan entitled 1670 Church Road, Powder Property, LLC? Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you all.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
And item 7C, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, declaring its intent to adopt a permanent electronic records policy as set forth in the Municipal Records Manual approved on December 16, 2008, and amended on March 28th of 2019. I'll ask our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to present this agenda item.
So Community Development Department, we have a lot of files. We've been working on scanning those files into Laserfiche. We've been here before for some disposition or destruction of files. And we follow the state records retention requirements. So there's a manual. The only documents that we have sent for disposition have been documents with a time constraint. So after 5 years, you can destroy. There are a separate list of documents that are required for permanent retention. I like to think recently, but it was probably close to 5 years ago. The state allowed for that permanent retention to be conducted with a format called PDF-A. So there's a little bit of a paragraph in there that talks about what that is. It's a file that can be read essentially by any PDF viewer. It's kind of an accepted norm. So what we're looking for, because we haven't come to the board and asked about how the board feels about that permanently retaining records in a digital format, we wanted to come with this proposed resolution that restates that we're following the guidelines and then has the PDF-A caveat on there. The other important note is this is just kind of the first step in the process. There was included in the packet, there was a form that's required to be filled out and sent to the, bless you, that needs to be sent to the state that tells you what documents are going to be kept, destroyed, and then kept in PDF-A. So the process we'll follow, assuming you proceed with this, is we will be bringing the same disposition resolutions for those records that are permanent retention. We will have that form that goes to the state. So tonight, we're not asking for any destruction of records. We will still have to bring that list to you. I can also kind of give you a little bit of background on what prompted this. We sent out a lot of documents to get scanned last year. We had them in PDF, and now we have them in PDF-A. There's a lot of permanent records in there, so we're kind of getting through this. So if you do pass, I expect to be before you at the next meeting or the one after with the disposition list.
Very good, Dave. Thank you for that presentation. Just so I understand, the form that is filled out, that is sent to the state before we destroy the records or after?
I think it's just a documentation so that they have it on record.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure if we're supposed to send it before. We'll figure all that out.
It's really not pertinent to this particular
I'll have that answer for you next
resolution.
time.
Right. I appreciate that. Does the board have any comments or questions on this particular resolution?
I do have a quick question, Dave. It very clearly says it's not a budget item. So is this done in-house or in the future? What's the
So
mechanism?
the scanning, there's a budget item. So we have a budget line item, and typically CD uses $10,000 roughly a year to take care of some of our back files. So I think, and we're talking about for next budget, we have a lot of files. There's a lot to do beyond just CD. So we kind of have to start strategizing and trying to figure out how, like if we don't decide to start keeping records digitally, we have to start planning for where we're going to keep them, what's that going to cost, what's involved with that. So we kind of have to we're at a fork in the road on which way to go with the document retention.
Thank you.
So this will be a yearly or so
We
agenda
will
item.
certainly endeavor to make it yearly.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Any public comment on this agenda item? Anybody online with a question? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution to adopt a permanent electronic records policy as set forth in the Municipal Records Manual?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 8A, we have a motion to authorize the Township Solicitor to prepare a third amendment to the improvements agreement to Eck Road and Crackersport Road warehouses 2017-104. And again, our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, if you would please present.
So at the January 17th, 2024 meeting, the Board of Commissioners granted the extension or authorized the solicitors to draft the extension for IPT Allentown. These are the Crackersport warehouses. The security agreement is for a year or 4 years. And they're getting extensions on that because work's been taking some time. The last meeting or the last extension, the board asked them to come back with a 6-month update. Because things have been taking a while, we're proposing that we have staff meetings with professionals monthly to kind of make sure things are progressing. And if there's any issues, we can jump on them a lot quicker. So they're looking for an additional extension. I believe the applicants are here to answer any questions. And I can answer any questions as they come up.
Very good. Before we move on, I just had a question. You stated monthly meetings with professionals. Does that include both township and development team?
Yes.
Okay, so it'd be
Yes.
both meeting on a monthly basis.
Yep.
Very good, thank you. Before I open it up to the board, I would like to again ask our township engineer for any engineering comments. This is the board on this agenda item.
There's work going on Chapman's and Eck right now. They're working through construction, hopefully wrapping that up shortly. Probably the developer can tell you better schedule. We still have not completed a final inspection. That's known because they're not done the work. At that time, we'll have should have a fair list of items to be done before they can even enter maintenance. So we understand there's more work to be done on the site, including what they're just doing now, but we are following their progress.
Very good, thank you. At this time, I'd ask the developers team to come up and just give us an update, please.
Hello again, Matt Culp with IPT Allentown. I think as Mr. Tellerita said, we're progressing out there, not without some challenges. We had some design conflicts, and frankly, it's just taking longer than we thought it was going to take. I think the reason for the longer extension we're looking for is the one remaining piece of actual work is still coordination with Norfolk Southern, and it's really a scheduling thing with the third-party engineers. So. Again, that work being temperature sensitive, we're hopeful to get it done this fall, but if it doesn't happen, that's what we're asking for an 8-month, so we can do it in the spring when we come back. But again, also happy to meet monthly, to progress meetings.
And if you would please update the board on the progress of the Eck Road work.
Yep, absolutely. So right now the intersection has been reconstructed, stormwater is in. We're looking to start paving next week, and we look to wrap that up by the end of October.
So the end of this month,
Yeah.
it will be. And as far as the punch list of other items besides the Norfolk Southern work, can you help us with the other items that you're waiting?
So those items are mainly administrative surveys that we owe them, documentation from the HOP permits, things like that. Actual physical work, it's Norfolk Southern, and there may be one other small item that's on there as well.
Okay, very good. This time, does the board have questions?
I just have one. Dave, you'll have to let me know if we can do this, but staff recommends an 8-month extension. If for some reason the work isn't done, or even if it's done, would you be amenable to coming back before this board after, say, 4 months, halfway in between, to keep us updated, to keep the public updated? Is that something you'd be amenable to?
Absolutely. I think the big thing is going to be really when temperatures get to a certain point, then I'm happy to come back, as that's going to be like, hey, things are going to push till spring, and I can kind of lay out a path forward. But I'll come back whenever you guys like to see.
I would prefer that.
Well, 4 months takes us to October, February, it is October. You were speaking about weather, so are you envisioning between January and?
It's likely going to be end of October, beginning of December, where we would have the cutoff for temperatures and completing our work. So if you want to say the beginning of December, we'll know where we're at.
By the beginning of December,
Yeah.
You feel like you'd have a
We'll have an idea whether we're going to get it done.
status update that would be appropriate, because you're going to go into the winter season after January and probably won't be able to proceed
Correct.
with some of this paving work.
Correct.
Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah,
So a status update at our first meeting of December.
that'd be great.
Is the board in agreement with
No,
December?
no. You came before us and asked for an extension to December, till December 31st initially. And after discussion, you said from the paving season ends at the end of October, that you'll be able to get the work done by the end of October. Take away the Norfolk Southern, because that's a whole different thing. You came back here in June and you said everything was on track, everything's good, we're going to be done by October 31st. And here we are, you're not going to be done by December 31st or October 31st. Why should we just keep dragging this out and dragging it out? Like, what if we say no? Like, you got to get it done. Like, this is.
I 100% agree with everything you said. Unfortunately, again, things happen. Our third-party rail inspector
Can take
Norfolk Southern out.
I understand Norfolk Southern, but you said all the other stuff when you agreed to the October 31st deadline. You said, oh, yes, we can get it done. It's the end of the paving season. We'll be done. Everything's good to go. You came back in June. You said, we're good. We're all, and now we're like, well, we need 8 more months now.
And that's for the Norfolk Southern work. The work at Eck Road and Chapman's Road will be done at the end of October.
Can we give an extension just for the Norfolk Southern work?
No, not really. You could attempt to you could do separate dates for the separate work, but you'd have to identify that in the improvements agreement.
Is there legally, Attorney Zader, is there any comment for the board guidance on this particular item?
Legally, it can be done. Pragmatically, I defer to township staff and our township engineers, whether that is the best way to go about it. But certainly I can draft for it. There's nothing in the municipality's planning code that would obligate it to be one time only.
So you can say it one time only extension?
No, I'm saying there's nothing in the MPC that says you have to have one deadline for everything and you cannot split it up. That could be done. I have to admit, I've never seen it done that way, but doesn't mean it can't be done if that's the pleasure of the board. But whether that's pragmatically a good way to go about it, I defer to the folks who are involved with that kind of stuff day to day.
If you don't mind me jumping in here. So as I said, They've not completed construction. Let's ignore Norfolk Southern. They have not completed construction yet. At the time that they complete construction, we will do a final walkthrough, a final inspection. We do that for every job. At that time, there will be pieces of work throughout the project that need to be fixed. I walked it earlier this week. There's cracked curb. There are items up and down Eck Road that have problems, a couple manhole lids, there's dead trees, there's items like this. So while the bulk of the work is done, it's not going to be accepted and it will not be put into maintenance until all those items are fixed. And then once it gets put into maintenance and you have a year and a half afterwards, we get to do the whole thing over again. So I guess I can guarantee you that we will not have a final inspection by October because the whole job is not done. Norfolk Southern's not done. At the time they do Norfolk Southern, who knows? They might come in with some equipment and crack a piece of curb or ruin some pavement because they're putting heavy equipment on there. I hate to say it like that because I understand everyone wants this done, but that may happen and we don't want to miss out on the opportunity to miss that for a final inspection. So I think that while the bulk of the work and the road should be open by October and the work in essence should be done, it should be drivable. There's a lot of work up and down that corridor that needs to be done, needs to be checked, needs to be confirmed before we can even release and get them into maintenance. So you might get a little hairy the way that you word this just because of that fact.
I appreciate your comment about, the Norfolk Southern, they bring their stuff in, they really don't care about anything else except their work. May not, all right, thanks.
We are committed to finishing this project. I'm here, I'll continue to be here. We're continually spending money. It's not like we've stopped. You can see we're working out there every day. And not making excuses, but it just seems like this is one that something else comes up, and it keeps pushing.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, Commissioner Peischel. I agree with you. Okay, Norfolk Southern is its own entity, but there's all that other work that needs to be done. And I don't want it to become like a lackadaisical thought, oh, well, we have this long extension, we're just going to take our time. I mean, we have residents on that road that, have been suffering and we want to get this done. So I want you to keep moving forward. And Norfolk Southern is going to do what they do on their timeline. But I wanted to keep going forward.
I totally agree with you, and I think it was a great suggestion for us to meet with staff and with my design professionals monthly, just to give both staff an update and to help push things along in case there's any issues that come up. But like I said, the majority of this work will be finished, at the end of October.
I certainly agree with all the commissioner comments so far, and I do have a question for township staff. I'm not sure if it's for the manager or for Dave, community development. These monthly meetings, and this is something that we haven't really seen before from the board's perspective. We typically give an extension and then ask the developer to come back and speak to us. So from the time we grant an extension to they come back, the township's really not necessarily meeting and conversing, and we're making a scheduled once a month. What do you hope to accomplish, and does that help the township to keep this project on track, as the commissioners are all asking for?
Yeah, it helps to identify the technical items that require additional actions from the developer, and any illegal items as well. As noted by Mr. Culp, there's some administrative items that need to be done from that standpoint as well. So yeah, we would schedule monthly meetings and then hopefully have outcomes as a result of that from each meeting and deliverables.
So hypothetically, if you're in your second monthly meeting and township staff is working with the developer and things are not moving positively, at that point, you have the discretion to come back to the board and put an agenda item on and invite them back to update the boards and the public?
Certainly, yes. But at the same time, the extension, whatever you grant, that time limit would still be in effect. So they would still have that effective time period to get the improvements completed.
Okay, I'm just questioning how certainly the board will be kept up to date with these monthly meetings, and also the public. The public is very interested, certainly the homeowners on that road. How will the township communicate with specifically the homeowners
We can, when there's outcomes to report, we can communicate with the homeowners directly.
Okay. I think that would be important to do personally. I'll allow discussion to continue. Is there other comments from the board?
No, we want it done. I mean,
And we want to finish with
I'm sure you do. It's just, yes, if we grant the 8 months and if we have to lock into the 8 months, it just seems like if it's not done in 8 months, then what, and I don't mean to be negative, but I'm just thinking worst case scenario, if at 8 months you come back and say, hey, we need another 4 months, like then.
I understand your frustration.
Yeah. What is our recourse then, other than, well, we'll be done in 4 months?
So aside from the Norfolk Southern, which is another agency that's outside of your control for timing, the other punch list items that are outstanding, is there a reason why they haven't been completed by this deadline of extension that we granted you last time?
It's primarily the HOP work, which we're working on, and then the administrative items that follow after that.
So specifically just working through, there's nothing that has impeded you from?
No, and again, other than conflicts in field and things like that.
Okay.
Well, I'm hoping that this monthly meeting with staff is kind of like a safeguard to make sure that we're kept on track with this and this gets done, hopefully even sooner, especially if we have a mild winter, sooner than later.
Yeah.
Is there any other comment from the board at this time?
My only comment, it's along the lines of my fellow commissioners. I'm fine giving you the extension, but with the underlying message in strongest terms possible that with the exception of the Norfolk Southern work, which is largely dependent on them, get it done. This has gone on far too long for this board, for the township, and way far too long for the residents. So in the strongest possible terms, you'll get your extension if the board is so inclined, but get it done.
Understood.
Any other commissioner comments? Is there any public comment this time? You had your hand up first. Good evening. Please give your name and address for the record.
Brian, excuse me, Brian Height, 1273 Eck Road in the township. I'm one of the residents that you spoke about on this project. 1,946 days since the Board of Commissioners approved this project. 5 years, 3 months. None of you were on this dais except for Solicitor Zader when this was approved. That gives you some context of how long this project has been tormenting myself and my fellow neighbor, Mr. Pushkar, in the back. I appreciate all your comments and it's greatly appreciated. I just have, most of my questions that I had were taken by you and I appreciate that, of your concern for this project and for the residents and the impacts that this has caused. I was going to ask about the monthly status meetings, but from the answers, I think that handles that question. My question is the stormwater that is constructed right now operating as designed?
It's not complete in the north. The northern areas near Chapman and Eck, it's not completed. So I can't say it's functioning correctly because they're not complete at that time.
Because as I have stated, for over 4 years since construction started, my property is still getting flooded. This past week with the heavy rains that occurred, it was something else. And I'll leave it at that. And my other question is on page 96 of your packet, why is Jim Murray's name in that agreement? I was told he was no longer a part of that corporation. So.
Yeah, my understanding he's not. So.
Yeah, there'll be a different signer.
Correct.
I don't know who this is speaking, so.
It's the applicant's attorney, but yeah, correct. Any reference to Jim Murray will be removed, to my understanding.
And I will leave you with a quote from a person that built my home 55 years ago, and that's my father. It's not hard to do the right thing and do what you are required to do, make amends, and take accountability for your actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Height. Sir, you are next. Please just identify yourself and give us your address.
David Torrey, 1351 Deerfield Drive. I personally have been up to that property, and Brian has shown me the problem. I can't believe this has gone on for 4 years. I think if you give an extension, there should be, if they fail to correct his problem within the next month, because we got the winter season coming, there should be daily penalties against this warehouse operation. I mean, this is going on, as Brian said, this is ridiculous. And I've been up there. So I think you've got to, if you're going to give an extension, they don't meet the specific goals each month. They should have a specific pattern of goal presented to you, and then you approve it by that thing. If they don't meet that goal, there's a daily fine. I think it's time to get tough. Okay?
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, I don't know if we can we make a list of
I'm going to ask Attorney Zader.
There would be no authority under the state law to impose a daily fine for this type of circumstance. The developer has time allotted under the resolution of approval. Should the board extend that time tonight, the developer would have that amount of time to accomplish the task. The recourse of the township in the event of a default, which is a failure to accomplish the task within the prescribed time, would be to draw upon the security that's been posted and to then take over construction of the work itself as a township. And the security could be used for completing those tasks. Drawing on developer security is something that's, while not unheard of, is both rare and something that needs to be taken very seriously. And if you could put it in the context of an employment action, for example, we're all familiar with the concept of progressive discipline, of warning followed by counseling, perhaps followed by some serious disciplinary action, ultimately termination of an employee. I think the prudent approach with any kind of potential drawing on security would be a similar escalation of approach. So, for example, hearing what the board said this evening, culminating with Attorney Roth's comment that the developer just ought to get it done. I think that should you decide to grant that extension tonight, perhaps it would be with the understanding and clear message to the developer that setting Norfolk Southern aside to the extent it's beyond the ability of the developer to get the work done without the cooperation of Norfolk Southern, and given what our engineer has said regarding the inevitability of there being a punch list of items, some of which are known already, others which will come about through final inspection by the Pidcock Company, that the expectation is at the end of that time period, that extension, should you grant it, that it would be expected that with the exception of the possible Norfolk Southern component of it, everything else ought to be completed to the point where it's ready to go into maintenance. And to me, that would be sending a very solid message. And it would be, if you will, that progressive discipline, if you will, that I referred to earlier in different context, so that the usual escalation, if you will, of remedies by a township is undertaken in that manner. I would also add that in this particular instance, the vast majority of the security has been posted by way of a bond. And in the event of any kind of disagreement between developer and township, and even when the developer doesn't necessarily disagree, the bond company often will have something to say. And while the township doesn't need to be fearful of litigation, you just need to go in with open eyes, recognizing that if you're looking to draw on a bond, it ordinarily means you're getting involved in litigation. So one of the questions you have to ask yourself in terms of proceeding in a stern manner with any developer is, are you ready to do that? And is that in the best interest of the township? So those are some of the questions and thoughts that need to go through your minds as you think this through.
So thank you for that, Attorney Zader.
Welcome.
Given the explanation you just gave, if we were to consider this to add to the extension this evening, this would all need to be done tonight in one motion. It's not something we would decide down the road. It would
At
be
this
tonight.
point, the motion that's on the table for consideration, at least it's on the agenda for consideration, is to authorize my office to prepare an amendment to the improvements agreement that would allow for an extra period of time. If the board is considering the idea of multiple deadlines as opposed to one 8-month deadline, then I would at least like to have some direction as to what you'd like to accomplish so we can attempt to put that into the document that we prepare. But ultimately, the vote would be by a separate motion after we've prepared this amendment. And actually, it would probably be by resolution.
Thank you. As this matter does pertain to both real estate and more legal, it's something that I believe we should discuss in executive session if we are going to consider this as a board. Would you agree, Attorney Zader?
I think we certainly can, and I'm certainly glad to discuss an executive session. I'm sure it was probably mentioned by Dave Manhart, but I don't recall what the current deadline is for this. 31st. So it could be tabled for discussion at the next agenda item on October, the second meeting in October.
Which will be the 16th of October. So there's time for us, if we were to table this evening, to have executive session for the board to be apprised of the legal matters surrounding this.
I would like to have direction, though, simply because even if it's being tabled, let me just think this through. If the current extension runs through the end of October, that means that you would need to make a decision before the end of October. And the amendment to the improvements agreement that would authorize the time frame to be extended, if that were not direction were not given to me until the next meeting, then I wouldn't have prepared for the next meeting. That does present a bit of a dilemma.
Yeah, so I think if I may speak for Attorney Zader, that he's looking for direction of what to put in the amendment. And if we want to have some sort of progressive discipline, as you called it, in that amendment, we would have to give him direction tonight so he can put it in that amendment for us to vote on at this next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. And certainly nothing prevents us from having executive session discussion before the next meeting. But I think there'll need to be action on this one way or the other by at least the next meeting.
So what is the consensus of the board on this particular matter? We have an option to proceed as the agenda is written this evening. We have an option to table, have an executive session with Attorney Zader soon after this meeting to provide direction and have this on the agenda the second meeting of October. Those are our options at this point.
I'm not ready to approve it tonight. I think we need to put something in there, as the residents say, that there's some sort of ramifications, what we can do legally to make sure this work finally gets done. We're going by their recommendations. We went by their recommendations. And here we are.
I need to hear from the full board on this.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
I would agree as well. If that's something we have the ability to do, I say we take that option in the interests of getting this done, and in the interests of the residents who have spoken about this issue and have been dealing with this issue for far too long. So I agree with Chris 100%.
Commissioner Johns, you need to turn your microphone on, please.
Yeah, I agree with Chris on this. It's been way too long. I didn't realize it was 5 years either.
And before I call to motion the staff, to our township manager and director of community development, is there any further input?
And I think we can certainly work through things. I'm just concerned, and prior to executive session, we'll have some answers, but pragmatically, what does it do with the maintenance period and the security? And we'll do some more research on that and kind of get those answers to you as well.
I know there were two members in the audience. I was just going to ask if there's anyone else. Yes, sir. You come up to the podium.
Hi, I'm Michael Pushkar. I live at 1479 Hick Road. I talk to the guys that work there every day. Very nice. It's not going to be from Eck and Chapman's in that area. It's not going to be done by the end of October. That's what they tell me, and those are the guys working. Okay? So that's all. I don't know how long you're going to extend it. Why? I mean, they can only do so much. I mean, they're working. I see there. I talk to them multiple times a day, but it's not going to be done by the end of October. They have to, pave the road, fix the intersection, fix all the pipe at the end of Eck and Chapman's, fix our junkyard. I'm like cut off from most of my customers coming up there. They can't come up. So it's not going to be done by the end of October. I doubt it. That's what they tell me. Because I ask them, it really doesn't bother me that they close the road, because tractor trailers and cars aren't flying up and down the street, all the time. But I'm just saying that highly doubtful. So there you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else present with a comment? Yes, sir.
Don Sheasley, 1411 Hampton Road. What happens if you don't give them an extension? What happens? After 4 or 5 years, I don't know anything about this until tonight, but it does sound pretty bad to wait 4 or 5 years and continue giving that, and you don't know there's any end in sight, and there's no penalty for it. There's no motivation for them to speed up, maybe hire more people. What do they need to do? Because after 4 or 5 years, I don't know, just a comment.
Very good. That's a question for Attorney Zader.
If you do not grant an extension and the work is not completed by the end of October per the current documentation, they would technically be in default. However, given the history of where we are and my understanding of the functioning and status of various items of work out there, for the township to take action on default, there are some issues that we would need to discuss in executive session. And I think that given my comment earlier about taking a progressive disciplinary approach, if you will, I think is probably the most prudent way to go about it. And therefore, with that in mind, if you want to have bifurcated, in other words, multiple time limits, one for Norfolk, one for everything else, you could consider that. I could draft for that. But I would, while it's probably executive session material, I think that planning on putting the developer in default less than a month from now is perhaps not a pragmatic approach to it.
Thank you for your legal counsel.
Good evening. I'm Julie Wagner-Burkhart with Stevens and Lee. I represent the applicant here. I just want to say a few things that I think are being missed. A lot of what transpired from the time that this got approved until today was dependent on outside forces. There was a huge HOP process involved in this project to get approved, and easements that needed to be obtained from property owners, and the process took quite a long time, which is partially why we're still here today, because the Eck and Chapman Roads intersection was dependent on obtaining some easements and right-of-way from property owners. So the process just simply takes time. And before you can even begin and put a shovel in the ground with respect to those types of improvements, those legal items had to be, worked through, which was a pretty extensive negotiation process in and of itself. So, you're not dealing with a developer who hasn't been at work throughout this entire process. It's not as though there has been a stagnant period where there's been nothing done at any point. There's always been something in the works with this project, albeit a long period of time since approval. There's been consistent work being done. So I mean, a lot of times these time periods are at play because you don't want to see something go stale and have a developer walk away and start ignoring the project. That's not the case here. You have a developer who is, at work. Even with respect to some of the comments from this evening, there's been a lot of behind the scenes working with property owners and discussions with property owners and trying to work through matters with property owners. So, those things have been occurring. I've been witness to them in my involvement with the project, and I've been in constant contact with your township manager as well as the township engineer, working through exhibits and so forth that had to be attached to these legal documents that all had to be worked through as well. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there has been consistent progress with the project. There hasn't been a time that's been stagnant. Because we are now in October and the deadline for this work to be completed is the end of this month. You've heard from the developer himself that he's intending to diligently continue to pursue that work, particularly that intersection. Perhaps it makes sense to give a lesser extension period or authorization for the amendment to be issued with a lesser period that makes you more comfortable. And we come back again in front of this board, in addition to the monthly meetings that we've already agreed to have with staff, to just make sure that the comfort level of the board is where it needs to be, so that you can see that the progress that he's saying will be accomplished by the end of the month is, despite the fact that the engineer needs an opportunity to come back and do the inspections that need to be done to wrap this up entirely. We threw 8 months just because when you head into winter, you're then, potentially subjected to weather, although it could be a mild winter, as I believe you indicated. We are hoping it is. If it's more comforting to the board and for those residents, we could agree to a lesser extension period as an option as well.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone?
I would also note, if I might,
Yes.
in talking with Tony Tallarita a few minutes ago, he had mentioned that the PennDOT paving deadline is, I think, October 15th. And that's less than 2 weeks away. And the Chapman's Road segment of that work is a PennDOT road. And I'm not sure the sequence of actual work that needs to be accomplished, but that's an awfully short deadline.
Thank you. That's very good information. Is there anyone else in the public with a comment? Is there anyone online, Dave? Given the multitude of comments and counsel, both from our attorney and engineer and staff, I personally would like to recess for a short executive session to have some legal counsel before we make a decision to move forward. Is anyone in agreement on the board?
I agree. Second that.
Okay, at this
I
time, we will recess the meeting for a short period of time while the board convenes into executive session. We will return shortly.
When do you think it'll be done? Well, it's on your movie. I don't think that's
Yeah, no, they,
I do all the time. I see it straight up. I didn't know it was
well,
We are adjourning to executive session and will be returning shortly. Thank you.
So whose fault was it you think it's early?
This conference will now be recorded.
Testing.
Thank you all for your patience. The October 2nd, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting has been in recess. We are reconvening to continue our meeting this evening. I thank you all for your patience. At this time, after a meeting in executive session, the board has crafted a motion that I will read, and I will allow any public comment after this is made before the board votes. The motion is to direct our attorney, Zader, to draft an amendment for an 8-month extension for the work on Norfolk Southern, and to extend a 3-month extension for the remaining list of items. In the next month, the Pidcock Company will perform an inspection on site, and we would advise the developer to join and to participate in that inspection. We would have monthly meetings between the development team and our township administration, and to have the developer return to the Board of Commissioners at our December 4th public meeting to update the board on the progress. And we would expect to see the developer to continue working on this project beginning tomorrow until you come back on December 4th. That is the motion of this board. Is there a second?
A second.
Developer wish to make any comment? Thank you. Is there any public comment before we vote? Is there anyone online with any public comment? We have a motion and a second. Attorney Zader, the motion as I have read is sufficient for the direction that you need?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 8B, we have a motion to approve check requests for the state aid allocations for aid received in the amount of $905,983.96, as well as the total general fund allocation of $1,998,796.04. Let me say that one more time, $1,998,796.04, including the payment of all 2024 defined benefit MMOs as well as the prepayment of the total 2024 defined contribution MMO. I'll ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to present this agenda item.
Thank you. So a motion is requested to be approved by the board for the recommended distribution of the state aid allocation that will be actually received and actually already was received in the amount of $905,983.96 on Wednesday, September 25th. So we have 30 days from the receipt of the state aid to deposit the amount into the custodian bank for the township's pension plans. The allocation of the state aid to each of the respective pension plans of the township should be based on the distribution formula derived from the 2023 AG 385 report that was filed with the Auditor General earlier in 2024. So the number of units for each plan serves as the basis for distributing the state aid to each plan because the amount of the state aid received by the township is based on the number of units generated by the plan participants. A unit is defined an employee that was on the payroll for at least 6 months for the preceding year that the AG 385 was filed. For Act 600 defined benefit police pension plans, each eligible employee counts as 2 units. For non-uniform plans, each employee counts as 1 unit. So it's recommended to distribute the state aid based on the actual number of units reported by each respective plan in order to ensure a consistent approach now and in the future. So to summarize, so the police defined benefit plan had 82 units. So the unit value for all of the amounts was $6,291 and change. So that was up from last year's allocation from the state, which was $5,827.89 per unit. So the police defined benefit plan has $515,907.53 from state aid, and then the MMO is $1,241,903. So the general fund allocation for the police pension plan is $725,995.47. The office defined benefit pension plan had 6 units. So we do a little bit of shifting between the office defined benefit and the defined contribution for the combined office public works. But the bottom line is MMO is $770,730. General fund allocation was $654,140.13. Public works defined benefit plan has 10 units. State aid allocation is $62,915.55. MMO is $681,000, $681,576. General fund allocation is $618,660.45. Again, as stated before, we do a little bit of transferring between the defined contribution, but the bottom line is the MMO was $210,571, and the state aid, we budgeted for that amount, and then with the state aid, we can meet the MMO requirement. So the total general fund allocation is $1,998,796.04. Again, the MMO is $2,904,780. So the amount funded by state aid was $905,983.96. So the motion essentially allows for the check request to go in as soon as possible to meet the 30-day requirement and to authorize the payment of all the MMOs. So again, MMO for police, $1,241,903. Office defined benefit MMO, $770,730. Public works defined benefit MMO, $681,576. And the defined contribution prepayment is $210,571. So just to note, the defined contribution is based on the actual payroll of the township for the plan participant members, and we are trending to be right on target with what was budgeted.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation, Tom. Does the board have any comments or questions on this agenda item? Is there any public comment? Is there anyone online, Dave, with a question? Hearing and seeing none, these will be 4 separate motions. I have a motion to approve the police defined benefit MMO payment for 2024 in the amount of $1,241,903. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I need a motion to approve office defined benefit MMO payment for 2024 in the amount of $770,730.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I need a motion to approve Public Works defined benefit MMO payment for 2024 in the amount of $681,576. Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I need a motion to approve Office Public Works defined contribution MMO prepayment for the 2024 in the amount of $210,571.
Motion.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tom. Agenda item 8C, we have a motion to approve the cast-in-place pipe lining for the 31st Street Sewer Project to Mr. Rehab LLC in the amount of $30,490. I'll ask our Director of Operations, Herb Bender, to please present.
Public Works has been working on the necessary sewer repairs to the 8-inch line on 31st Street between Tillman Street and Washington. This section of sewer line that was sagging was repaired on July 1st of this year. We are now working to finish up the second part of this project. Roughly 400 feet of 8-inch sewer pipe will be lined with cast-in-place pipe. Some of the benefits to the cast-in-place pipe is cost efficiency, the durability, and the quick installation of this. The cast-in-place lining will not require us to change any forms of maintenance that we currently do with regarding of cleaning and televising of the sewer lines. That we're requesting a motion to approve the cast-in-place lining on 31st Street sewer project to Mr. Rehab in the amount of $30,490. This was budgeted in the sewer capital for $55,000. To date, we have spent $10,570 with Swarman Excavating to fix the sag in the sewer line. With both phases of this project completed, we will be around $13,000 under budget.
Very good, Herb. Thank you. Is this a project that will be completed this year?
Yes, we have worked with Mr. Rehab in the past, and we have worked this out. So we did get the lower price. We did not need to do the T-liners for the laterals coming in, and we are going to do the heavy cleaning part with our sewer truck that we have. So they'll just clean it that day, move in, clean it one more time, and start to put the cast-in-place pipe in right away. So we're looking at to start this at the beginning of December. Our part will start in the middle of November to make sure that pipe is completely cleaned and ready to go.
Very good. Thank you. Does the board have any comments or questions on this motion?
No, I don't.
Is there any public comment? No one online. Do I have a motion to approve said motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. Agenda item 8D, we have a motion to reject all bids regarding bid number 2024-07, furnish and delivery of police uniforms, followed by motion to rebid. I'll ask Interim Chief Brown to please present this agenda item.
So Township staff received and opened 2 bids to furnish and deliver police uniforms from Patriot Workwear and Sinatra Uniforms. Sinatra Uniforms is considered disqualified for the following reasons. They are outside the required mileage from the township, which is 100 miles, proposed a brand manufacturer other than what was requested on the specifications, but did not list as an exemption, and they did not submit the required bid, bond, or cashier's check. Patriot Workwear is considered disqualified for the following reasons: not completing and uploading required bid forms as instructed in the bid specifications. Southwest Township Police and Purchasing Departments is respectfully asking the board to reject both bids and grant permission to rebid.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any commissioner questions on this agenda item? Any public comment? Anyone online? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve said motion?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 9A, correspondence and information boards and commissions. I'll ask Township Manager Tom Petrucci to please review.
Thank you. So all of the details of the events I'm about to read are posted on the Township website. So Monday, October 7th, 7 p.m. is the Public Safety Commission meeting. Tuesday, October 8th, 6 p.m. is the Crime Watch meeting. Wednesday, October 9th, 10 a.m. is the Civil Service Commission. Thursday, October 10th, 7 p.m. is the Planning Commission. Monday, October 14th, 7 p.m. is the Parks and Rec Board. Wednesday, October 16th, 7 p.m. is another Board of Commissioners meeting. So also just want to make a general announcement for leaf collection is commencing. So please check the Township website for updates as well as the utilization of the leaf collection hub.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10A. We have Nexus 78 Land Development Project in North Whitehall Township. And I'll ask our Township Manager again to please present.
Thank you. So the Nexus 78 Land Development Project is located in North Whitehall Township. So it proposes a new 547,500 square foot warehouse to be served by 2 access locations, which includes 1 full access driveway to SR 309 and 1 right out driveway to Orfield Road, SR 4003. The developer is TCNE North Whitehall 2 LLC. So the studied intersections that were included as part of the traffic impact study prepared by the developer's traffic engineer, which is traffic planning and design, included the following: 309 and Shankweiler Road, 309 and Orfield Kernsville Road, 309 and Limekill Road, 309 and Huckleberry Road, 309 and proposed full access driveway, Orfield Road and proposed right out driveway. So to give a summary of the items included within the TIS as prepared by the developer, it's provided as follows. The available site distance at each driveway will exceed PennDOT's desirable site distance requirements for passenger vehicles and intersection site distance standards for trucks. Upon full build out, the proposed warehouse development is expected to generate 89 new vehicle trips during the weekday AM peak hour and 92 new vehicle trips during the weekday PM peak hour. Under 2024 and 2029 projected build conditions, the study area intersections will operate at the same overall intersection level of service as under 2024 and 2029 base no build conditions respectively during the weekday AM and the weekday PM peak hours, or have an overall increase in delay of less than 10 seconds. Improvements to be funded by the developer were proposed or are proposed as follows: SR 309 and proposed full access driveway. Proposed driveway approach will be classified and designed as a low volume driveway. They want to provide a stop sign to control exiting traffic. The driveway should be designed with sufficient radii and lane widths to accommodate trucks. They want to construct a 125-foot long southbound left turn lane along 309, and they want to construct a 125-foot long northbound right turn lane along 309. For the Orfield Road and proposed full access driveway, the driveway approach will be classified and designed as a low volume driveway. They want to provide a stop sign to control exiting traffic, and the driveway should be restricted to only permit exiting or egress, right turning traffic only. And the driveway should be designed with sufficient radii and lane widths to accommodate trucks. So currently it's our understanding that Herbert, Rowland, and Grubik Incorporated is conducting an independent TIS for the intersections are on behalf of North Whitehall Township. So South Whitehall Township officials reached out to HRG to see if they could be of use to conduct an independent TIS for the intersections in South Whitehall Township that have a potential to be impacted by the Nexus 78 development. So the list of intersections that were proposed to be studied within this new independent TIS is provided as follows: 309 and Walbert Avenue, 309 and Ridgeview Drive, Cedar Crest and Huckleberry Road, Cedar Crest and Parkland High School driveway, 309 and proposed full access driveway, Orfield Road, and proposed right out driveway. So it would be prepared, the TIS, in accordance with PennDOT's policies and procedures for transportation impact studies, last updated February 2024. So the cost of this proposal was $25,400. Upon review of the year-to-date financials for South Whitehall, there are no appropriate general ledger line items that would be able to absorb the cost of this proposal. Also, I wanted to note that it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement of the developer for the project to conduct a TIS for the identified intersections which are located in the township, because it would be off-site. So should the TIS, if conducted by the township independently, show major impacts within South Whitehall as a result of this North Whitehall Township project, PennDOT guidelines may not require specific, and likely wouldn't, specific improvements in South Whitehall Township to be completed. So just a general information, the next public meeting for this project in North Whitehall is a special planning commission meeting on Thursday, October 24th at the Lehigh Carbon County Community College, starting at 7 p.m. So looking at the cost of the TIS and some of the PennDOT restrictions, one of the options would be that you could utilize a transfer of funds between general ledger line items in order to authorize the TIS proposal scope of work to be completed. However, that's not the recommendation of staff. At this point, the developer did provide an escrow fund of which was used for sewer, but they authorized the township to do a cursory review of the traffic. So there was about $5,000 left in that escrow fund. So the township engineer did use that funding to conduct preliminary reviews. So we would recommend that we send correspondence to North Whitehall Township, to PennDOT, to the developer, expressing the concerns of South Whitehall Township, as well as the identified findings of the township engineer, which I will then ask Tony Talarita, township engineer, to please give a high-level summary of your findings, please.
Thank you. We did a review. Really, it was two parts. We looked at the plans themselves and the land development aspects of this project that are within South Whitehall. And we have 8 comments. The letter is included, talks somewhat drainage. There are frontage improvements that are mentioned on their plans, which would be in South Whitehall Township. So there would be an aspect of land development, or development, I should say, in our township. I don't know if that requires an application and a full submission to our township. That's further discussion and questioning. We also talked about buffering, as our zoning doesn't align with their zoning. They have industrial or warehouse use right next to our residential uses. So we would request some type of buffering between those zones. So we went through about 8 comments that discuss that. The second half of our review was a traffic study. And as was mentioned, they provided an analysis of their development. We have 3 or 4 major points in our letter about when the traffic counts were done, as they were done 2019. Talks about other background data that would not be included, that we request they be included. And we are asking them to do further intersections down 309 in our township, as a large portion of all that traffic will leave North Whitehall, come south down 309 towards 22. So those are comments that again, high-level comments that we've come up with, but I can discuss further, more in depth if you so choose.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate your review, and Tom, thank you for your analysis as well and your memo. Tony, in your letter, this warehouse is assumed to generate 903 daily trips. And I appreciate that you are asking the developer to take into account other projects that have been approved and are in stages of being built that weren't identified. So thank you for the holistic picture that you provided in this. It's very helpful. I agree that it absolutely makes sense for the township to share our concerns with North Whitehall Township and Tony's letter in its entirety.
So I got a couple. Looking at the list of intersections, because of the right out onto Orfield, the tractor trailers will not be able to go down Orfield to the east. So why are we looking at Cedar Crest and Huckleberry and Cedar Crest and the high school would taking those intersections out lessen the cost that we may have to have if we decide to go through a traffic study?
Yes, it would absolutely cut the cost in half. And it was also identified the fact with the Ridge Farm improvements coming down the line that we may not need to study those intersections.
Okay, so so to that, I would say if we can remove 3 and 4. The other question I have is Coffeetown and Orfield floods a lot. And we get called, the fire department gets called there for people who drive through the water and lose track of the road and end up in the field. And then the fire company has to go get them. Is any of this storm water going to be addressed? Because I'm sure it's going to increase the flooding in that area. I don't know who.
Well, the applicant would be required to treat the stormwater on their property that they're generating so that the existing conditions as they are today, theoretically, under Act 167, would require them to not add to that stormwater impact.
And the shoulders on Orfield Road in that area are very narrow. Would there be requirements of the developer to widen the road to increase that road, the shoulders and so forth, to accommodate for larger vehicles turning on the Orfield Road and cars being, I can envision tractor trailers making very large swings and people going eastbound on Orfield Road having to swerve kind of to avoid them, especially at peak time, potentially causing safety issues.
Good comment. So one, the traffic study was done in a way that assumed that the 309 betterment project is in place. Okay. So 309 betterment went through and added some shoulders, added some turn lanes and retimed some signals all up and down that corridor. This traffic study assumed that. Now, if they choose to move forward without 309 betterment, there's nothing, we would consider this an invalid traffic study. They might have to do further improvements or do the improvements identified in 309 betterment to make sure that it can work. There will be analysis by PennDOT that for all those intersections and all those turning movements, that will also be done. So in terms of Orfield, they will be required to do frontage improvements into our township. Now, off-site frontage improvements is not something that's governed by the MPC. That would be hard to get them to do at other intersections. And in terms of the stormwater, a small component of the project does flow south. We've identified that as potentially problematic, and we asked to see stormwater. We did not get a storm report, so we didn't dive into that yet. They, in essence, would have to follow all the regulations of the planning, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission that reviews stormwater. North Whitehall reviews it, and if we get the study, we would do a full review.
As a follow-up, very good questions, Commissioner Peischel. Tony, so there's a parcel of South Whitehall Township that's being included in this development. I believe it's a little over an acre. So, and I'm not sure if you're the person to answer this or maybe Attorney Zader, as a township that has a very small percentage of this entire site that's going to be developed, what position is South Whitehall in to be able to ask the developer for the type of improvements, for example, that Commissioner Peischel is bringing up this evening, or identified even in Tony's letter?
The only hook the township has to require land development review and approval would be with respect to improvements taking place within the township part of the project. So on Orfield Road, if there are improvements that are part of the project going in on township property that's within the township, then there could be an obligation to require fulfillment of saldo as it relates to that small area of the project. But it cannot be a situation where the tail wags the dog. And if there are no improvements going on in the township, which candidly until tonight is what I thought was the case, then we cannot require land development approval. So what I can do following tonight's meeting is be in contact with staff, be in contact with Tony, and give additional thought to how much the township can involve itself in the process. But to the point asked by the question asked by Commissioner Peischel and Tony's response for off-site improvements, Orfield Road heading east near the intersection of Coffeetown, clearly off-site to this project and cannot be required of the developer that anything be done there. If it's going to impact their project and their ability to get their trucks going where they want them to go, they may have an incentive to do it, much like the Chapman's Road, Eck Road Warehouse project doing work at Chapman's and Eck. It's off-site, couldn't be required, but they wanted to do it in part because it helps their flow of trucks. If this is one of those situations, maybe they're incentivized, but I don't know.
Thank you. And one follow-up, again, South Whitehall's portion of this plan is only a little over an acre, and we're looking at studying potentially intersections within South Whitehall. We don't have the ability to, or the authority as a township to, again, require of the developer to make any improvements. If we were to go through with this study and identify impacts, it would really be for our information, not necessarily anything that we could enforce.
And that's often the case with traffic impact studies. When you have off-site areas that are studied, PennDOT can require what they require off-site to the project, but a municipality cannot under Act 209.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question. The 309 in Walbert, that's included in the betterment project, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then 309 in Ridgeview is included in our transportation plan that we've been working on with Bowman.
Correct.
So we as a township can take into consideration at least the Ridgeview and perhaps accommodate what we know is coming, since it can't be done by the developer because it's not on site. Is that correct?
You could, as part of the active transportation plan, we have identified 309 and Ridgeview as a need of safety enhancements or congestion enhancements. So basically, the geometry of that intersection is something that needs to be looked at and further studied, and that will be identified in the plan.
Okay, great. So then I think option 2 is the best thing, to present Tony's findings and having our staff attend these meetings and be, have a seat at the table, be as involved in as much as we can. So I'm in favor of that. And Tony, I thank you for adding all of those. You put a lot of work into that, and it makes things a lot more clear for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, this is going to dump out on the Orfield Road and go up to 309 for them trucks to.
Correct. So they have an exit onto Orfield Road that directs them on the 309.
Right.
Now,
you get to that red light there at 309 in Orfield.
It's misaligned, correct.
Okay, you can't even make.
The other thing too is, for clarity's sake, because it was mentioned once that Orfield Road is not restricted for trucks at this time.
Right.
So if trucks are leaving the site at I'm going to call their 309 driveway, they're allowed to go south on 309 and take a left onto Orfield to go that way.
To go out to Cedar Crest.
Correct. There is no restrictions. Now that intersection in that location it's pretty tight also. As you get towards that way, just keep in mind that Parkland High School did come in with a sketch plan for a high school expansion, I think 41,000 or something square feet. In their study, they're going to need to study that their intersection, their driveway intersection, and potentially other intersections in their area, because they are affecting that roadway too. So you have a good number of studies happening within the township, within development, as well as Ridge Farms did a lot of studies up and down that Cedar Crest corridor that we have access to, and they have improvements throughout. So I think you have a good number of studies and a good amount of data within the township if something would come up.
Thank you for that, Tony. Does the township have the ability to add a truck restriction to Orfield to make it local deliveries only, for example, to the school and to the distribution center?
That's a state road, so you would have to. It's different than a local road restriction, unfortunately.
With that in mind, do we want to entertain proactively Ritter Road and Sunset to make that no trucks except for local deliveries somewhere, in the future?
You got the quarry though coming across there all the time. Quarry trucks.
Yeah, Dave Manhart.
Go across Orfield, but what I'm
Right.
saying is Suncrest from
Okay.
Orfield to Cedar Crest and then Ritter Road.
Dave has some
So-
input on that.
I guess it was a couple months back, we had put out a proposal for an analysis of probe data that included a truck analysis. So the goal of that analysis, is, speaking towards freight, is to look at areas and identify what we can call freight corridors. And then also on the opposite end of that is roads that would be suitable for freight restrictions. So one of the things that this is kind of prompting is prioritizing that project and the subsequent plan. So we'd come up with a freight plan to be a volume of our transportation plan that has the recommendation for truck restrictions and truck routes, so that we can, as a municipality, can get ahead of the trucks going down Ritter, going down Suncrest, prior to, and hopefully prior to something like this coming in, and address what's currently happening here and there.
The only thing my concern would be is that study you're talking about uses data, real-time data, but with this, trucks aren't going. So we would have to kind of anticipate
Yes.
where trucks may go in this situation.
Yes,
Right? So
I think
there may not be a freight corridor now because it doesn't exist, but as this
Right.
warehouse opens, it potentially could.
Right. And I essentially, and this also ties to the classification, which was part of that, where we'll have like a hierarchy of roads, and like the higher order roads are suitable for truck traffic, the lower order roads are not. And that's how we kind of work our way into truck restrictions, freight corridors. So using essentially that classification and then the existing freight movement that we've seen. One of the things that I'm looking forward to of getting into that data is what happens when certain roads are shut down. So the biggest concern with this project is if 309 shut down, where are those trucks going to go? And having the ability to go back in time, look at a specific time instance when there was a problem on 309, we can kind of pull that data and see what happened, so that we can kind of get ahead of some of that and anticipate what may happen in the future with more trucks on that road. So this has really kind of brought that project back to the top of my list, and adding to it, getting those plans done sooner rather than later. So I expect you'll be seeing those in the coming weeks.
Very good. Thank you for that update, and thank you for your proactive work with that study. Looks like it'll be very good information and very timely.
I'm not in favor of it. Based on what Tony says, we have enough traffic study data. I don't think we need any more data.
Right. And yeah, so the recommendation would be to compile what we have and put that into a letter and attend the meeting.
Is everyone on the board in agreement? Yes, you have the direction that you need.
Absolutely.
Very
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no old business. Agenda item 12 is courtesy of the floor. Again, opportunity for any member of the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. He's already up. Come on up.
Vinnie Quinn, 1407 North 21st Street, Allentown, PA. I'm just letting you know, Transbridge got information yesterday, and Friday we'll be sending a bus to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, with hurricane supplies for the people in the hurricane and the flood areas. I'll be driving the bus. Somehow they talked me into doing it. So there's a list here what they're looking for. They're not looking for any clothing items right now. It's basically trash bags, work gloves, masks, including dust masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, diapers, bottled water, formula, food and wipes, first aid supplies, personal hygiene items, laundry. The personal hygiene is like shampoo, conditioner, toothbrushes, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, deodorant, and bar soap. So if anybody wants to give anything, Transbridge is collecting tomorrow from 8 to 5 at their garage on 2012 Industrial Drive. And they're doing it Friday from 8 to 12 because we're hoping I can get on the road by 4 or 5 o'clock Friday, drive halfway, and then drive the rest of the way. And I don't know how long I'll be down there till they can get me in and unload the bus, but we'll see what happens.
Would you repeat the times for tomorrow and Friday?
Tomorrow is from 8 to 5 at the Transbridge Garage on 2012 Industrial Drive, and then Fridays from 8 to noon.
Very good.
And if anybody can't, I can take it over if something happens. And Monica has it to see if they can put it on the website.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that with the board and the public.
Okay, thank you.
At the back of the room, come on up.
Brian Height, 1273 Eck Road. What's with the variable message boards that say construction's going to start November 9th on 309 Ridgeview, Walbert? Like, is that related to the Eck and Chapman?
Chapman's, yes. That detour plan was all set up by Liberty and approved by the state.
They should update the sign that says detour, you know, just because it says construction's to start now, people are like, okay, did it start? You know, so it's kind of confusing. So I'll reach out to PennDOT. So
okay,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, come on up.
Dave Torrey, 1351 Deerfield Drive. I just want to commend the board for starting to work with North Whitehall. We have got to approach a regional approach to planning. And because this warehouse is obviously going to put a significant traffic flow into South Whitehall. The Unfee warehouses, or however you pronounce it, have certainly put a lot of stress onto 309. And it's unfortunate, and when this was being considered, that nobody thought about an easy pass ramp from the turnpike right up into that facility. There are emergency access routes right there to do it. So, but I encourage you to work very closely with North Whitehall on this and work on this. And because I know there's a lot of opposition in North Whitehall for this. So maybe we can put some South Whitehall opposition to it as well. The other thing, just for a point of information, when is this Route 309 Orfield Betterment Project supposed to start?
2026.
2026.
At the earliest.
Okay. Okay, that's turning lanes and stoplights and.
Yes, widening. Yep.
They're going to remove that stone building right there to that'd be the southeast corner.
I believe so. I don't know exactly which building you're talking about, but I believe you're correct.
Yeah, that's the one that has antiques in it or something like that?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with any public comment? Is there anyone else online, Dave, with any comment?
I'm sorry. Was Mr. Torrey, were you talking about the interchange project? That will start this year, or the betterment?
Orfield Road and.
Okay, it's betterment. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure we're talking about this because there's two 309 projects.
309 Orfield Road.
Yeah, we're talking about the same one. Okay, I just wanted to confirm. All right.
A lot of projects going on.
Yeah.
Moving on to agenda item 13, I need a motion to authorize payment of invoices and disbursements.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We have no executive session. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.